Hey guys, so this is our final video going through how to write a comparative analysis essay. This video will be focusing on writing conclusions, what you need to include, what you need to think about when you are constructing your conclusion for your essay. So I'm going to go through a couple of tips and then I will show you how I have constructed my conclusion for the essay prompt that I've been working on over the last few videos. So with your conclusion, it's really important that you give summarizing statements regarding both texts. So you must mention both texts in your conclusion. You should try to identify and include key terms from the essay prompt or from your contention in your conclusion. This is just a more overt or obvious way of creating links between your response to the essay prompt itself, and how you're finalizing your essay. You need to make a clear link in your conclusion back to your response to the essay topic. That's really important, that you are essentially reminding the reader of your essay what it was that you started writing this essay about and what it is that you're finishing up with. Your final sentence should attempt to make a global statement about the importance of what both texts are able to offer us. Now, a global statement is it's essentially just a big statement, a big sort of world statement. So what I mean by that is I want you to step back from both texts, and I want you to think about what they actually offer the world. Why do we have these texts? Why do we study these texts? What is so important about these books, these pieces of literature? And you can make a form of summarizing statement in that final sentence. So your conclusion, how long should it be? Not long is the answer to that question. You should not be writing another full paragraph that's the same size as your body paragraphs. That's not going to do you any favors. Your conclusion should be concise, clear, and short. I would recommend 2 to 4 sentences. So obviously not two very brief sentences, but 2 to 4 sentences long. That is all that you need. And I'll show you what my example looks like with 4 sentences. You really don't want to fluff about in a conclusion. What I mean by that is you do not want to continually repeat points that you've already made throughout your essay. So what I do find is a lot of students freak out when they get to the conclusion and they think that they need to then go over everything they've already said. You do not need to do that, and you want to avoid doing that as much as possible. So with your conclusion, I really do recommend you keep to that 2 to 4 sentences limit so that you avoid repetitiveness. And making that concluding statement not really necessary, more of just a, hey, this is what I said in my first paragraph, this is what I said in my second paragraph. You don't want to be doing that. Your conclusion should summarize, finish, sign off on your work. It is not a space for new information. You're just concluding what you've already stated. You should use your introduction to help you write your conclusion. So remember, in your introduction, if it's structured correctly, you should have your response to the essay topic, and you should have your 3 arguments that you've fleshed out in your body paragraphs. So all the information you need to write your conclusion is really in that first introduction. So your introduction can really help you when you write your conclusion. You should, of course, mention the authors of both texts in your conclusion. If you're discussing both texts in the conclusion, it's pretty likely that you will mention both authors, but sometimes students forget to talk about the author and they just continually talk about the text. I want to hear about the author, particularly in the conclusion. So we are going to use our contention and our arguments to help write our conclusion. So let's just remind, I'm going to recap what my essay prompt was that I'm doing my example essay on. So the essay prompt was, Anne makes the following statement in her diary, quote, "I still believe in spite of everything that people are really good at heart," unquote. Compare her experiences with Ellie's experience and their differing views on humanity. Now, my overall response to the essay topic was this. It is our experiences that define our perception of humanity, our ability to hope, and our ability to have faith. It is impossible for someone to appreciate all the good and all the evil that people are capable of. That was my overall response to the essay topic. My first argument, people are unable to take into consideration that which they have not experienced, therefore it is impossible to know that people are really good at heart. Argument 2, when someone has lost everything, what is there left to hope for? And argument 3, we can only speak from our experiences, and both texts recount, And both texts recount experiences from vastly different perspectives, one from a man looking in retrospect, another from a young girl living in the moment. Now, what I really want to do is just simplify that, because reading all that stuff, yeah, like the sentences sound good, sounds like I know what I'm talking about, but I need to make it easier for me to actually write this conclusion. What are the points that I've made here that would be interesting to revisit in my conclusion? So I've narrowed those arguments down quite considerably into very simple sentences. So first sentence, Anne and Ellie had different experiences. That's what I can really boil my first argument down to. They have different experiences, therefore their books are different. The second point, my second argument, hope is not guaranteed. So that's an argument that I've boiled that down to the very simple basics of the point that I'm trying to make. And my third argument, both books were written at different times in the author's life. So those are the points that I'm sort of making, very, very simplified, of course. Now, looking at these points, I think, okay, what are some things that I can use in my conclusion? By looking at these arguments, I don't really want to talk more about what I put in body paragraph number 2. I'll be honest with you guys, that was probably my weaker paragraph. Or my weaker idea for a paragraph. So I'm actually going to take that one out of the mix. In my conclusion, I'm simply going to reflect on some of these ideas in the very small 2 to 4 sentences that I've given myself to do so. So remember, when I say reflect on, I'm not saying write 1,000 words in a conclusion. I'm talking about really brief, mentioning these ideas, summarizing these ideas. That's all you need to do. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how I've done that. So this is the conclusion that I've come up with from my introduction, my response to the essay topic, my arguments that I've created, and this is how I want to summarize my final conclusion, so my essay. Both Anne Frank and Ellie Wiesel share their experiences and their opposing conclusions about human capacity for goodness and for evil. Anne, the young idealistic teenager, remains hopeful in her diary that she has a future thanks to the goodness of others. Ellie, the adult who lost everything as a young man, sees only the evil he experienced and writes his memoir in the hopes of stopping history from repeating itself. Despite their differing perspectives, both Diary of a Young Girl and Night offer incredibly raw insight into the polarizing facets of human nature. And that's it. That's my conclusion right there. So if you count out those sentences, that's 4 sentences in total, nothing more. And I wouldn't go any further than that. Otherwise, I'd get really wordy, and that's just too much. We don't want that. Conclusions, short, sharp, concise. So you can see that I've begun my conclusion by talking about the authors. I've done that because, honestly, I just don't want to forget to do it. I want to make sure that I am actually mentioning the authors. Now, with these 2 particular texts, it's actually very difficult not to talk about the authors because the characters and the authors are the same. These are memoirs. So Anne Frank's writing a diary, Ellie Wiesel's writing a memoir. They're obviously writing about themselves. So these are our characters. So it's difficult not to talk about the author, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it can be very easy not to mention, say, the director of the film that you're studying or the writer of the play that you're studying. You need to make sure that that is at the forefront of your mind, particularly in the conclusion. So I've started off my conclusion by discussing the authors. Now, this is a point that I had from my third argument. So my third body paragraph is about perspective, and it goes into detail about how Ellie wrote his book when he was an adult, and he had time to look back and understand his experiences and have a purpose in writing his memoir that was very different to Anne Frank's. And obviously, Anne wrote as a teenager while these things were happening to her. So you can see that I've done this really briefly in my conclusion. I have not made sentences of their own. I've described Anne as the young idealistic teenager, and I've described Ellie as the adult who lost everything as a young man. I am implying that they wrote the books at different times of their lives. It's just something I want to put in there to flesh out my essay and make it really clear that I understand this aspect of the text. I understand the authorship and how that impacts on the way that the experiences are presented in these 2 texts. Now, my concluding sentence, my last sentence, it links clearly back to the essay topic, and it also is what I would call a global statement. I'm reflecting on and I'm asserting an idea that these 2 books have something to offer us, humans, us as a society. So despite their differing perspectives, both Diary of a Young Girl and Night offer incredibly raw insight into the polarizing facets of human nature. So this is a sentence that kind of hits two birds with one stone. I'm linking very clearly back to my essay topic. And I'm also making a bit of a bigger statement that makes it very clear that I've gone, yep, I've analysed these two books. Now let's reflect on why I've done that. Why has my teacher, decided to set us these two pieces of text to analyse? Because they offer us X, Y, and Z. So that's what I've decided to do with my concluding sentence. I also wanted to highlight for you guys wording, which I think is really important. So one of the things that I've said in this video about conclusions is try your best to include key terms or phrases from the essay topic in your conclusion as much as you can. So you can see I've done that here. The words in yellow correspond with each other. So in the essay topic, compare her experiences with Ellie's experience and their differing views on humanity. So what I want to do is I want to make a comparison. I have done that. I've made a comparison with when I'm talking about Anne, the young idealistic teenager, remains hopeful, blah, blah, blah. Ellie, the adult who lost everything, sees only the evil, blah, blah, blah. So I've made that comparison there. I haven't used that term in my conclusion, but I've done that comparison very briefly in the conclusion. The word experience I've used quite often. So I'm not repeating myself. You're not using it every few seconds, but you've used the word experiences because it directly responds to the essay topic. It talks about experiences, and that's what I've done in my conclusion. I've just reiterated that I am talking about the differing experiences. And then, of course, the word differing. So I've put in opposing conclusions, differing perspectives, and humanity, human nature, human capacity. So I'm using that same terminology from the essay topic just to make it really clear to the reader of my essay that I am responding to something. I'm not just talking out of thin air. I am responding to a particular prompt. So terminology, the way that you write, the words that you use are very important, and they can really help to add a little bit of depth to your essay response. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. Now is your time to go off and try your best to write your own conclusion for your essay prompt. Please send me an email if you have any questions. Otherwise, I am very excited to read your full and complete essays as of Tuesday, which is when this particular online lesson is due. It's due Monday, 9 p.m. So I would expect that on Tuesday, I will have full and complete essays from all of you. Very excited about that. Awesome. Good luck.